there's a fundamental class warfare happening. We are at the worst wealth and income inequality in the modern history of the United States. Certainly more worse now than it was even before the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And you know, we can talk about the Biden economy and the good that happened there, and we should, because things work. Things got better in many respects. However, poverty also increased by 66%. The expiration of the child tax credit, which kind of dominated that conversation the first 6 months of Biden's presidency. As soon as
Yeah.
Manchin said he's out, Biden checked out, and child poverty increased dramatically. And you can blame Republicans, and we should, but that's a reality that happens. And when you're the party in power and that happens, guess what? You get blamed for it. And so
Right.
right now, the Democratic Party is struggling. I think this is one of the reasons why that it's struggling, because we're not writing the narrative of the work that we did do and the work that we could have done, but got derailed by people like Manchin, people like Mitch McConnell.
Yeah. I think we could have, when I was in Congress, 21 to 23, we did get a lot done. We got more bills passed through the House and the Senate out of 60 years. It was the most prolific U.S. House of Representatives in 60 years. So we got a lot done. Was it all the right things? And did we dilute some things down because of conservative Democrats didn't want to go all the way and really kind of insulate and fully solve the problem?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a great deal of that happened. And it happened around Build Back Better.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. The Build Back Better initiative, I mean, that was kind of his landmark bill. And if that had passed, that would have fundamentally transformed our country for the better. I think it would have been the most devastating blow to wealth and income inequality
Yeah.
since probably the New Deal.
If you
And
had, yeah, if you had only kept universal child care in there
yeah,
and the child tax credits, poverty would have gone down by a factor of probably somewhere around 40 or 50%. Just those
crazy.
two items. But for whatever reason, conservative Democrats blew it up at the last minute and took those things out. And there's a lot of reasons, very boring technical stuff, but they took them out. And so here we are.
But why did Biden and Harris stop pushing on that? Like I feel like that was one of their best selling points when they were running for president and vice president. It certainly
Yeah.
was one of the things that I heard people at the door say, "Yeah, I'm compelled by that. That makes a lot of sense to me." Why did they move away from that and go back to this? Let's move to the center. Let's get, let's pass more police funding, more military funding, more
Mhm.
militarization. I
Mhm.
mean, this doesn't appeal to people on the left at all. And if they think that that's going to appeal to people on the right to flip over, it's not. It never has. So why
Yeah.
didn't they aggressively pursue folks on the left the way they were pursuing folks on the right? It seemed like.
Because they attribute people in, again, in the mythical center that does not exist. It's like a magical fairyland that just does not exist. But context voters, some of them lean a little right on matters like police forces and taxes and that kind of thing. So they are constantly tacking to the right. So what they really mean is they're going to tack to the right. And that didn't work in the campaign. We all saw the campaign. They tacked all the way to the right into republicanism, all the way, right? And it didn't work. So why would you do it again? It's like the
Yeah.
definition of insanity. So
Yeah. I think I read that in the 2020 election, you had 4% of Republicans switch and vote Democrat.
yeah.
And then you had like 3% of Democrats switch and vote Republican. So you had like a 1% net gain. And
Yeah.
then in the 2024 election, it was basically the exact same thing. You had Harris campaigning with like Liz Cheney, for God's sake, and you got zero net gain. In fact, I think post election polling showed that it turned off more Democratic voters than it won Republican voters. And I think that goes back to, like, we need fighters in the party, and we're not seeing that right now. Instead, and we talked about this, but we see a lot of yelling at activists that if you hadn't been so outspoken on this issue Biden was doing wrong, then maybe the Democrats would have won. That There's a lot of comments I have on that, but what is your philosophy on that?
Well, let's think about that for a minute. So when activists, it's the most American thing we can do is to activate and be activists, right? Is to state what we want and need and what we think will solve a very serious problem.
Yeah,
So when activists are doing their job well, of course, they're kind of making legislators a little nervous, uncomfortable, and anxious. And
yeah,
to which I say, good, that's what we do. That's how change happens. We make people uncomfortable and then we get them to change. So when they say they're uncomfortable, I say, oh, good, I'm doing my job. Yay.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that we can't sit here and legitimately criticize Republicans for not holding Trump accountable when he does something he's not supposed to do if we're not willing to call out our own party as well.
Yeah,
And simply saying, well, don't you know Trump is a fascist and he's far worse? It's not enough because yes, we know he's a fascist. Like that's not a debate. That's not a question of maybe he's better. We
yeah,
know he's a fascist. That can't be the framing. The framing can't be vote for this guy doing something terrible or the other guy's worse. Like
right.
is it too much to ask for that we have a candidate who, on something as serious as genocide, is going to draw a line and say, I'm not going to fund that. And the point I always bring up that this is not Monday morning quarterback. This is not, well, you should have done what I told you to do, or you should have done it this way. We had 30 polls across the country, including in swing states. Every single one said, look, this is a losing issue. You're risking the election. In the swing states, it was shocking the data. Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, every swing state had on this question of arming Netanyahu, voters said that they were anywhere from 5 to 8 times more likely to vote for Harris if she simply stated, I'm going to stop arming Netanyahu to commit these war crimes. Just from that statement alone.
Yeah.
And the party just refused to do that. And so overall, 77% of Democrats, 63% of independents, and 61% of Republicans said, stop arming Netanyahu. And
Yeah.
my whole point is if you're going to run in any campaign and 77% of your base says, hey, I want this thing really badly, it's important to me, and
Mhm.
you tell them no, how do you expect to win an election when you're running it that
Yeah. It's when there's a really important verb that the Republican, the Democratic Party needs to do, and they need to listen.
way?
It's
Yeah.
not even about remessaging or replatforming or that. They need to listen. The number one thing Trump voters said about the Democratic Party that when they were waffling was, "You didn't ask me and you
Mm.
didn't listen.
Yeah.
You didn't ask me." And so we may have even been here saying what they wanted to hear, but we did not ask them. We didn't get their buy-in.
Yep.
And, you know, that's just critical. So right now, how do you fix that? Say, hey guys, we screwed up. This would be very compelling and powerful. Hey guys, we screwed up. We didn't listen, but we are now. And this is what we're doing. We're going to all 50 states. We're doing these soft sound, these focus groups, blah, blah, blah. So we really listen to you and understand what you want. That would be powerful.
That would be. I just don't. Instead, what we're seeing is this narrative of, hey, we've got a plan. We're going to be putting, we're organizing. We're putting together a plan, and they're caught on their back foot, right? Trump is doing this blitzkrieg style executive order after executive order.
Yeah.
Every fascist thing in the book, and you've got Democratic Party leaders like, whoa, 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 where's all this coming from? And I think you made this point really beautifully on one of your social media platforms the other day that you had their plan in writing. Project 2025. It was a 900-page plan in writing for years in advance. How the hell are you just waking up to realizing, oh, this is pretty serious?
Yeah.
It's malpractice.
Yeah, it really is malpractice. The fact that they had that playbook and they knew what was going to be prioritized in the early days, and they in that period of transition did not put together a full plan. There's no excuse, and I have said it directly to Democratic leadership. With love, I want them to succeed. If they could just understand, all of the activists want them to succeed. All of the voters want them to succeed. Everybody wants them to succeed. It is true and deliberate and purposeful and honest. That said, until you start doing something different, it's very frustrating for everyone. So let's do it. You screwed up. Say you screwed up, said, okay, you know what? You're like a good boss. Be like, you know what? That's on me. And we're going to move forward. And these are the things we're going to do to insulate us moving forward.
If you're just tuning in, we're speaking with former Congresswoman Marie Newman right here in Illinois. She's got a great book coming out called A Life Made from Scratch. Comes out on March 18th, I believe you said. Is the pre-order available already?
Yeah, pre-orders available on Barnes and Noble and Amazon and on my website, marienewmanstudio.com. And you can order it now, but unfortunately, it doesn't get delivered until March 18th. So we are where we are. But if you want to
Nothing
pre-order,
unfortunate about that. Let's build up the
yeah,
momentum and make it a bestseller.
let's
Um,
Godspeed. Yeah.
You've talked because I see folks in the comments saying what can we be doing, what should we be
Yeah.
pushing for. You've talked extensively about a shadow cabinet.
Yeah.
Um, Talk to me like I'm five. What is
Yeah.
that?
No.
What does it do?
So
How does it work?
if everybody gets a hot minute out there and you want to hear about this Timothy Snyder, just Google Timothy Snyder, wonderful scholar and historian, and the shadow cabinet. The idea is all of these knuckle chucks are in Trump's cabinet, right? And honestly, and very, very sadly, I'm better credentialed than they are for some of these spots, and I'm not
Believe it.
credentialed to do any of those things, right? So it's
Believe it.
very sad. So the knuckle chucks are over here. We need a set of real live humans with real experience that are credentialed and eloquent on all of these topics so that when the media comes out and says to Hegseth, hey, what do you think about this type of combat, that type of combat, and the technology that we have, and he can't even put a sentence together. We have someone over here in the shadow cabinet saying, well, this is what should be done. Because if we don't have that, we have no sense for the comparison. We just think
Yeah.
that America is led by knuckle chucks,
Yeah. And it gives people, ordinary voters, a comparison of what a functioning cabinet
Yeah.
looks like, what it should
Yeah.
look like. I mean, and I mean, the Department of Transportation is a perfect example right now.
Yeah.
I think Buttigieg did a pretty solid job with
Yeah.
one helping push through the infrastructure bill, and we're seeing the thousands of projects all over the country. And now this Trump regime has come in, and I don't think people realize this. He suspended funding from the infrastructure bill. This is money that had already been
Yeah.
committed, allocated, promised, and he's suspended that funding. And you can go on TikTok and you can see all these farmers who voted for Trump, who were happy that Biden passed the infrastructure bill, who made business investments, expecting that money to come through, now saying, "Oh crap, what do we do? Because that money is no longer coming through anymore.
Right.
How do I run? I'm going to lose my farm at this point."
Yeah.
And I think, again, Democrats are missing a golden opportunity, as you said, to have a shadow cabinet and say, hey, by the way, this is what it's supposed to look like right now. You are supposed to be getting these funds that you were promised. You are supposed to be buying the extra equipment, expanding your farm, getting the extra technology you need to be more productive. Instead, eggs are still $1,000 an egg. These farmers are losing the basic necessities they need that they were promised, and there's nobody pointing the finger at Trump. I mean, for God's sake, his approval rating is the highest it's ever been. And
Right.
I put that on Democrats' inability to put together a coherent message of where he's messing up and what the better alternative, what the better solution actually needs to be.
Yeah. This and the opposite of what he said sometimes too. It's not just that he's doing all of the horrifying things that he said he was going to do. That's happening for sure. But then what's even more interesting is that he is counter to what he shared. He said, "I'm going to be an isolationist. It's America first." And what is it? He's trying to acquire Greenland. He's trying to acquire Canada. I mean, it's funny, but it's not
Yeah.
because that makes him that much more unpredictable. And I know that's part of his strategy. Bleh. Um, but
We
it
it's
go
beyond Greenland. It's Panama. It's Canada. It's he's already flat out said ethnic cleansing of Palestinians
yeah,
as well.
yeah.
And I want to talk about this because I think my listeners here will appreciate this. You were not just a champion for justice for Palestine. I mean, you spoke up for every marginalized community, but speaking up for Palestinian justice in Congress is a tall order. Talk a little bit about that, about why you felt that was such an important part of who you are and what values you stand for, despite the opposition you received, not just from Republicans, but from people in your own Democratic caucus.
Oh yeah, 89% of the Democratic Party was mad at me because I stood up for Palestine. It's really funny. I used to tell people because I'd get all these awards for standing up for Palestine and standing up for Syria and all of these places that need to be stood up for, quite frankly.
Yeah,
And for me, I always looked at it like, well, I'm just doing the right thing. I shouldn't get praise or I shouldn't get awards for just doing the right thing and being on the correct side of history, right? That
yeah,
should just be common sense. And we're all humans. Let's operate like moral humans, right? But I will tell you, it is very hard. So in Congress, most of the Democratic leadership is all in on APAC, right? I
yeah,
spend literally 3 chapters on this in my book,
yeah. You do.
talking about
Yes.
APAC. It it is the biggest bully in Congress, quite bar none.
Yeah, by far. I want to take some of the questions that folks are putting in the comments. If you have
Okay.
more questions, please do. Janine asked, how do we break through Fox, Joe Rogan, Bannon, OAN, Newsmax, and must comfort tweens online? That's an exact quote. Those aren't my words. That's the question. How do we
I
break
love
through,
it.
Marie? How do we break through all these folks?
Well, here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing more Democrats going on Fox, and I'm applauding them, and even progressive news media going on Fox. I know, however you feel about the Pod Save Bros, they've all been on Fox recently, and I think that's smart that progressive media commentators going. And but we have to get more members of the Democratic Party to go on Fox because there has to be a counter to it, and you can't be afraid of it. Yes, it's going to be unpleasant. It absolutely will be unpleasant. Too bad. Go on those. And Rogan is not,
Agreed.
I mean, he's Mr. Softball. So like that's an easy day. So just go do it.
Yeah. No, I agree. Look, I think engagement doesn't mean endorsement. And
No.
you're not endorsing. I think I've been on Hannity a bunch of times. I've been on Megan Kelly's show. I've been on with Tucker Carlson, for God's sake,
Oh,
and it was not a pleasant experience. However, I can't tell you how many emails I got from folks who said, "I'm a conservative. I'm a Republican. What you presented is a perspective I've never heard before. I want to learn more."
yeah,
And that to me is a huge
yeah,
win. That's a major victory. And I've talked to these folks. I've talked to Hannity, these folks offline,
yeah,
and they don't actually believe what they're spewing out there. For them, it's entertainment.
yeah.
For them, it's just a money making scheme. And I think once you understand that for them it's part of a game, which is unfortunate because lives are literally
It's
at
fair.
stake, livelihoods are at stake.
Yeah,
You kind of begin to understand that that's how they're treated, and that's kind of my frustration with the Democrats as well. That they're still playing by this rule book that doesn't exist anymore,
yeah,
right? Some people will get upset with me for saying this, but Michelle Obama saying that line about when they go low, we go high. I don't think that applies. I just think that's a really bad idea. I think you
well,
need to be able to go toe to toe. Now that doesn't mean you get belligerent and violent, by
yeah.
no means, but it does mean that you don't take any crap and that you don't tolerate that. In fact, to give kudos to Michelle Obama, the fact that she's like, no, I'm not attending the inauguration. Good.
Yeah,
Why are we
hundred
normalizing
percent. Yeah,
a fascist? Why is Barack
it's
Obama and Joe Biden sitting there chummy chummy with Trump? Like how are you going to call this guy a fascist and an existential threat to democracy, to the republic, and then go and sit toe to toe with them like nothing's wrong? That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
so here I have a slightly different view. I would
Please.
say um I think it's important for presidents to show up to those things, even when it's someone that is a fascist, right? It
Yeah.
is important for the office and for that to stay as. I'm not a big norms person, so you don't have to keep the institutions and the norms
Sure.
exactly as they are. But in that particular instance, but I do think it's good that Karen Pence and for all of why I don't agree with her, it was good that she did that, and
Yeah.
Michelle Obama say no,
Yeah.
look, no, I'm not doing this.
Another question, Marie. Margaret asks, judges are putting TROs on much of what the presidents are doing. What happens um, if the if they go against the judges and say we're just not going to follow through on the judges' rulings? What happens at that point?
Yeah, that's a really I this has been asked to many legal scholars. Weinstein talked about this on one of the shows over the last couple days, and he said, there are mechanisms that the courts go back out, and when they see it's not being followed, there's other mechanisms by which they enforce the it being followed, and you can engage law enforcement at that point. So there's that option, and that's not a good look.
No.
Um, so here's our problem, as we all know, and I'm sure everybody on this call is savvy enough to know that look, we've got all of these lower courts working on these orders. They're working, and Godspeed these state AGs, loving them, like keep
Hmm.
them coming, bury them in litigation, right?
Yep.
Um, but the problem is once it starts drifting up to Trump land and Supreme Court Trump land, who knows what could happen. Now, I will say, and I'll just put the bug out there, I think, interestingly, as much as I don't agree with anything she does or says, Amy Coney Barrett might follow the law once in a while.
Really.
'Cause yeah, she has a particular sensibility around some of norms and institutions that are, you can tell they're personally important to her.
Yeah.
that there may be some, so between her and Roberts, I would say, they might choose to follow the real law instead of the fake immunity law and all this horse
Yeah.
hockey they put out there. So I'm hopeful. But that said, we've got a long time between there and there. But we just keep burying. I mean, the strategy is flood that zone
I agree.
legally.
I agree. I agree. I mean, I'm so glad to see so many unions step up and file these
Yeah.
lawsuits against
Yeah.
Trump and Musk and Trump.
ACLU,
It's
individual
fantastic.
states.
Yep.
Jamie Raskin's putting a lawsuit out
I
on
saw.
behalf of the American people. I love it.
Yeah, I saw a
I
class
love it.
action. I mean, I think, I always use the Republican model of attacking the ACA, the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah.
I didn't realize this until I looked it up. Let alone lawsuits, they have had more than 100 votes on in Congress to try to repeal the ACA. More than 100. And wouldn't you know it that since the ACA was passed, they have not actually passed a single piece of counter legislation, much less proposed. Right? They're still at a concept of a plan,
Yeah.
and the sheer fact that they sabotaged the ACA to remove the public option,
Hmm.
and then all they've done is try to repeal it, and they've even gotten some Democrats on board with them. The guy I ran against, Bill Foster, Democrat here in Illinois,
Yeah.
voted 3 times with Republicans to repeal parts of the ACA, including parts that protect people with pre-existing conditions. I
Yeah.
mean, what kind of a pathetic politician would do that? Well, that's Bill Foster. Unfortunately, that's the kind of people that we have, unfortunately, on the Democratic side at some points, who are
Yeah.
undermining the will of the American people. So, all this point I'm trying to make is now, after what, 15 years, 16 years of trying to repeal the ACA, now they might actually successfully do it. And it's that fight for destruction that I'm
Yeah.
saying if they can be that assertive in fighting to destroy something that actually is helping people, as imperfect as it is. My family's on the ACA, my daughter's life
Yeah.
saving medicine is on the ACA.
Yeah.
Why can't Democrats fight with that zeal and that power and that empathy for something that is constructive, that
Yeah.
can actually help
Right.
humanity? Marie, we have another question from
Sure.
Mallory. She says, what trend or path do you think we are heading towards the next 30 to 60 days? I feel like we're just waiting for some kind of a spark. And I don't know what spark she might be referring to. But where do you see, what's the end game that you see based on what we're seeing right now?
Well, I don't think I have good news and bad news.
Yeah.
The good news is we're seeing those sparks everywhere. We're seeing legislators finally getting their heinies out the door and standing in front of federal agencies and screaming and showing people they are flipping mad, right?
Yeah.
That's important. Everyone thinks that's performative. You do have to make noise. We've got to
Yeah.
win back the news cycle. And
Yeah.
that's what Trump and his goons do every day. They get in the news cycle. We're getting into the news cycle. So that's happening. That spark is happening.
Yes.
I will say that the Democratic caucus in the House is unifying, and they're starting to act more like a phalanx, like a wall
Yep.
of opposition. The Senate isn't quite there, but they are now convening that way. So as a result, I think that we keep calling the Republican leaders, keep calling our Dem reps to say we expect you to vote against everything that they do. Remember, Mitch McConnell stood in the well of the Senate and said, I'm going to make it incredibly hard for Barack Obama, and he's going to be a one-term president. And you
Yep.
know what? What was great about that is that A, it didn't happen, but B, people believed it because he believed he could do it. We
Right.
need people to stand in the well of the Senate and the well of the House of Representatives and say, I will, we will, all of those things with incredible conviction. We need to take Jasmine Crockett, AOC, a little bit of Rokana, and some of the
Yeah.
others that have spoken up, and really and put that fire everywhere.
I completely
So
agree. I completely agree. If you're just tuning in to speak with former Congresswoman Marie Newman about her work in Congress, and I think just as important, how are we saving democracy right now? I get asked this question a lot, and I wanted to ask you because you fielded these calls. How important and how effective is it to call members of Congress
yeah,
and say, "Hey, this is a bad idea," or "Hey, this is a good idea"? Do
yeah,
people in Congress care? Does it affect them? How much does
yeah.
it affect them? How much weight does that carry?
So let me tell you what is most effective and will blow your hair back a little bit as a legislator. When you show up somewhere, when
Yeah,
you show up at someone's office, when you protest outside their office, they absolutely pay attention because that is a bad optic. So I do recommend you just show up at legislators' offices whether it's a senator or someone in the House, and whether it's at their DC office or their district office, show up if you want to ask them something. So all of these Republican reps that are have been completely, forgive me, emasculated,
Yeah.
and they're literally, Musk is taking their jobs away. Go to their offices and said, "Is this okay with you? A, it's reckless and illegal, and people are dying as a result of your actions, but they're taking your job away. Are you okay with that? Like, is that okay with you?" But in the if we're going to prioritize, showing up is a big deal and really gets your point across. The next one are calls, and the frequency of calls and the pain of calls, because everybody, they have to be documented.
That's
And
right.
here's a little known fact is that when you inundate and make the phone lines melt down, it makes all staff crazy. And then they yell at their boss. And then
Wow.
their boss feels bad. It works. Calls work. Emails,
Yeah.
social media, nah, they
Yeah.
don't, it doesn't really do anything.
But phone calls can be effective because you're
Yeah.
hearing their voice,
Yeah.
you're hearing the
Phone
pain in
calls
their
in
voice, the
person.
frustration.
Yeah. Phone calls and in person. Yeah. You get their attention real fast. By
Um,
the way, they by
yeah.
law, the laws of the House are you have to document every call. So they do know every single member of the House knows that you how many calls have been made for or against a topic.
I did not know that they had to
Yeah.
actually document it. So,
Yeah,
so
you
they
do.
can't just,
Yeah.
ignore that, oh, well, no one's called me about this particular issue. We
Yeah.
can actually document that. That's
Which was a great tool for me. It helped me understand where the district was. It's funny, it always was easy to tell. Like, we'd get 100 calls and it would be 70 one way and 30 the other way. It was always, I always was in touch because we knew.
I mean, so for folks listening, like that to me is such a great example of a low cost, a zero cost, effectively
Yeah.
action item that takes 60 seconds out of your day. And if you want to call, five members of Congress, you can do it all within 5 minutes. And just, hey, this issue is important to me. You better, do what you're supposed to do, or I'm going to be voting against you, or I'm going to be donating to the other guy, or I'm going to be making sure that you're not reelected. I mean, these are all legitimate, logical statements you can make to let somebody know that they are going to be out of a job if they don't do what we elected them to do in the first place.
And
Um, yeah,
Kasim, one more thing just to add on to
yeah,
the button on the end of that is, make sure you thank them too. So
yes,
if they voted the way you wanted them to, if they're screaming and shouting at the top of their lungs, if they're blocking, they're resisting, they're opposing, they're doing their job. So say yes and keep going because it is exhausting. So
yes.
yeah, so thank them.
Yes, absolutely. I remember I was on a flight with a U.S. senator. I think it was Mark Warner, and he goes to me. He goes, "Yeah, I don't think the child tax credit is that important." And I said, "You're
Beg to
kidding me,
differ.
right?"
Yeah.
He goes, "Yeah, I've got no calls from people telling me that it's affected their lives at all." And I said, Senator Warner, under no circumstance can you let the child tax credit expire. He goes, well, I need to hear from the constituents. I'm not hearing much at all. And that to me is mind blowing to me because I don't know where his head was at that point. But Marie, to affirm your point, for our folks watching this live, take the time to call and say, hey, thank you for this vote. Thank you for pushing this issue. It goes, and then you have to remember these are human beings ultimately, right? And
Yeah.
they get an ego boost when they get a pat on the back, just like my third grader gets happy when there's a little star on her homework. Members of Congress appreciate when their constituents
Me too.
appreciate the
Give them
work
a gold star.
that's doing as well. Somebody asked a question that I don't know the answer to. Is it true that you have to give your address? I've never had to give my address before. I guess
There's
the other
some.
question is does it matter if you're a constituent versus outside the district?
So you do not have to answer it. They may or may not. So those that poll you that way and they have screening questions, you can say, I don't want to share that. You can do that. And if they still are willing to talk to you, great. Or you can say something like, hey, I work in that district or whatever it is that you might do that's truthful, right? We want to be
Yes.
truthful. But more importantly, what you can do if you want to really get in Thune and all of the Republican leadership in the House's face,
Yeah.
have find a relative or friend that lives in that state and tell them to call them
There you
because
go.
everybody knows somebody somewhere. Like
Yeah.
I really had to think about it, but I know somebody in North Dakota and I know somebody in Wyoming, and and have them call their senator, even if they don't 100% agree with me. They may agree with me more than what's happening in America. Farmers are in big
Huge,
big trouble. It
huge.
is
Yeah,
heartbreaking what's going to happen to them. And they had no idea. And I want to loop way back to what we talked about before is that two things that the Republicans did that we didn't do. They asked people what they wanted and they said, I will fix that. It's back to the Mitch McConnell. I will do it with conviction. And then you go figure out how to make it happen.
yeah,
So we need a lot more of that. What do you want? And I will do it. We need a ton of that and
yep.
a lot less. I think we'll collaborate to look at the
Agreed.
social norms that blah blah blah
Agreed.
blah blah.
People want a fighter. People
Yeah,
want someone who they know they can count on to be a fighter, and it's as simple as that. I'm not saying Trump is an actual fighter, but he gives off that strongman
yeah.
perception, and
It's a
perception is
vibe.
reality,
It's
and
a
that's
vibe.
really what it comes to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody asked the functions of U.S. aid and CFPB. I just wrote articles on that. You guys can go read that in detail. Marie, we're down to our last couple of minutes, and I wanted to come back to your book, A Life Made from Scratch.
Mhm.
It goes live on March 18th. Folks can pre-order it right now on Barnes & Noble, on your website, Marie Newman Studios. Just what's the genesis of this book? What are you hoping to accomplish with this book?
You know,
And why should folks pick it up?
it ended up being more timely than I thought it was going to be. But originally, I wrote it because I had a very circuitous route to Congress. Right, I was a marketing executive. I ran a national nonprofit. I started the anti-bullying movement. I did a bunch of things that didn't have anything to do with Congress, but I was always an activist. I worked in healthcare equity and gun reform and all of those things. Right, and then ultimately, it became the right thing to do. So
Yeah,
anybody can do it, and
yeah,
anybody can do anything, and you can build any solution from scratch. Sometimes it's a political campaign, sometimes it's a business, sometimes it's an organization, but building from scratch is the way to go.
fantastic. Marie, thank you so much. And for those folks who are watching, make sure you follow and subscribe to Marie's Substack as well. Is it just Marie Newman Studios? Marie Newman on
It's
Substack?
at the I think the handle is at Marie Newman Studio, but if you literally just search me in there, you'll find me, Marie
Yeah.
Newman.
Support her work, and look, guys. At the end of the day, how we invest our time and resources is a reflection of the kind of world that we want to create in the future. And so that's why I ask you guys to support leaders like Marie, because she doesn't just talk the talk, she walks the walk, and reach out to her because she will also support you. That's how her and I got connected. I asked for her support, and she's been extraordinarily gracious in supporting me and my work as well. Marie, thanks for doing this. Let's do this again soon.
All right, thanks guys, have a good night,
All
everybody
right,
stay
guys.
safe.
Peace out.